My name is Jared and this is Sarah here. We are going to be doing a couple of short educational lessons that we are going to be sharing on our website, as well as a few Facebook pages to get students outdoors in this weird time of our lives. To start these lessons, I think we are going to do our maple syrup lesson. The reason is this is a pretty special time of year that we get to be able to do this activity here at Fallen Timbers. So we're going to show you the process of maple syruping. We're going to make sure that we go through each step and then eventually give you something at the end that you can do in your own backyard.
Yeah,
Okay.
We're happy to be able to share this with you. We have a lot of students who aren't getting to come out here this year and see our maple syrup process in person, so we're hoping that they're able to watch it from home and learn a little bit about what we're doing and know that even though you're all at home, we're still here because maple syrup season still keeps happening. So we're here collecting sap, making syrup, and enjoying the outdoors. And we hope you can get out in your backyards as well. So like Jared said, this is a really special time of year. And maple syrup season happens just in the springtime. We can't make maple syrup in the summer or the fall or the winter. It only happens this time of year. So in the winter, the trees are sleeping, and when the weather starts sending them a signal, they're going to start moving their sap up the trunk of the tree, up to the branches, so that the tree can start making buds and leaves. And the sap carries that energy carries that sugar that has energy for the tree to make buds and leaves. And in maple syruping, we're going to be collecting some of that sap. Just a little bit. The tree's still moving up plenty for the tree to have to grow. But when we collect that sap, then we can cook that sap to make maple syrup. So part of the reason maple syrup is so special is because it only happens this one time a year. And the season changes depending on the weather. So the signal that the trees are getting is that the weather is fluctuating. The temperature starts going up above freezing during the day and then keeps dropping below freezing at night. So when that fluctuation, that up and down of the temperature is happening, is when the sap is flowing. And that's what determines when maple syrup season is. It doesn't happen the same time every year. Sometimes it starts in February, sometimes it starts in March, sometimes it lasts 2 weeks, sometimes it lasts 6 weeks. So each year is going to be different, and we're having a really good run this year. We call it a run when the sap is running or flowing. So we collected how much yesterday? About 100 gallons of sap yesterday, and we're going to be collecting, we'll show you what we're collecting today as well. And we probably have almost another 100 gallons to collect today, and we're going to be making another big batch of syrup here at Fallen Timbers. And that syrup, our syrup, we use to share with students. So this year's syrup will be for samples on ice cream for our students next year.
Yeah. So we're going to go through the process of tapping a tree, the equipment that's included in it, how we identify some of our trees, and then we'll show you how we collect our sap, where we bring it next, and then
give you a little lesson.
Yeah, give you some resources to take home after this. All right, so now we are going to start this process of getting the sap that is coming up this maple tree here. So again, the sap is down in the ground. The tree is taking the sugars from the ground, and they're trying to send it up to their leaves or their buds that they're going to eventually turn into leaves. So what we need to do is we need to drill into this tree and get that sap to get that stuck in here and get it out of that tree. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use this drill. The drill has a 3/8" bit. Now this drill is not your common drill that you see in the hardware stores that you go into today. This is an older drill. We use these for our students because they're a little bit more interactive. And this is how they would have done it long time ago. So this drill is hand powered. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this into the tree and then slowly crank it to drill into the tree here. One thing that I'm making sure of is that this tree is over 12 inches wide, because trees any less than that just aren't ready to give us sap yet. So this one is definitely over 12 inches in diameter. So this one's ready to go. As I'm drilling this tree, I'm making sure that I'm drilling into the southern exposure side of this tree. So this is the side that's facing the south. The reason is the sun goes across the southern part of the sky, and this is the side of the tree that's going to heat up first. So this is going to release some water on this side of the tree, and this side of the tree is going to allow or be a better way for the tree to move that sap up to its buds. All right, so what I would do is I would slowly start to crank into this tree and drill into the tree. What I'm doing as I'm drilling is I'm going into the sapwood, and the sapwood is trapped inside the middle of the tree. All right, the next piece of equipment that I'm going to use is this spile. A spile looks like this. All right, so it has a spout there. The sap goes up into this hole. This faces down. The sap flows down through here and out of the spout there. All right, so what I'll do is I'll go over here. I'll tap this into the tree with a hammer. And that spout, or that spile, has a little hook on it that I'm gonna hang this bucket. This is just a bucket that anyone can use. This one is food grade that we can use to be able to give students this this syrup once we make it. The one thing that we've done to it is we do have a little hole here, and that's what we are gonna hook this bucket onto to hang it onto the spile. All right, so now the bucket's hanging on there. I'm gonna grab the camera so that you can see that this sap is actually starting to drip out of that bucket already, or into the bucket already. All right, so the last thing that we're gonna do to this bucket, now that the tap is in, the bucket is hung, we're gonna put this tent on here. This is just a piece of sheet metal. We're gonna put this over the top of the bucket. The main reason we put the tent on top of the bucket is to just limit the amount of rain or snow gets in there, because the main point of this is just to get rid of that extra water content and leave sugars behind. We don't want to add any more rain. We don't want to add any more snow. The other reason we put that on there is to keep sticks out of there from falling from the trees. We keep leaves out of it. And we have some pesky little deer here at Fallen Timbers that would come around and drink out of these buckets if we didn't have the tents on top of them. All right, so now this will sit, and this is going to drip into that bucket and fill it up. Since yesterday when we collected these buckets last, most of these buckets are about half full, some of them maybe even close to 3/4 full from yesterday. I think we have about 60 buckets out here, and all of them being half or 3/4 full is going to accumulate up to quite a bit of sap to collect today. That is the next step. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go get our gator, our side-by-side, and we're going to put a bunch of buckets in the back of the gator, walk around and collect all this sap and go haul it up to our sugar shack or our maple sugar cabin. And that is where we're going to cook it down and show you that next step. All right, so next step is to collect all the sap that is inside of these buckets that came from the tree. So what we do here at Fallen Timbers is we take buckets and go tree to tree and kind of accumulate the sap that's inside the buckets that are hanging on the tree, and then dump them into these buckets. And then we'll take these buckets and we'll dump them into our gator that has a bunch of other buckets in them. And then we'll take that down to our sugar shack. All you do is you just walk up to the tree, take the bucket off the tree. This one is quite full. Dump this into the bucket. Try not to spill. All right, and all of that sap came within yesterday at like noon or so, and today it is about 10 o'clock right now. So that bucket is 3/4 of the way full, and the majority of the buckets here at Fallen Timbers are still that full. So we got a lot of work ahead of us. When we collect this sap, we always make sure that we acknowledge that we wouldn't be able to do this activity or get this sap from this tree without the tree itself. So we always make sure to, like in our minds or sometimes out loud, we make sure we say thank you to the tree and make sure that we are appreciating our natural resources here in Wisconsin.
One of the other things that makes maple syruping so special and makes the opportunity to do this really special is that this knowledge has been passed down to us for many, many, many generations. And we have the indigenous people, the first people of this area, to thank for this knowledge. The Menominee, the Ho-Chunk, the Ojibwa, all the tribes in Wisconsin, all these native nations, for their collective knowledge, this traditional ecological knowledge that has been passed down for many generations. So we are thankful for that. As Jared said, we thank the resources, and we're grateful for that knowledge that's been passed down to us.
Yeah. So we're going to continue to go down the line here and collect all of the buckets that are hanging on our trees. We have already loaded about 50 gallons worth down to our maple syrup cabin. So I think we're about 1/3 of the way done. So we're going to continue to go empty the buckets.
Yep, and then we'll go down there and see what Matt's got cooking on the evaporator.
All right. All right, so we filled up the gator. The gator has, I don't know, about 10 buckets in it full of sap. We are gonna run this down to our sugar cabin. We didn't get to all the buckets. I think there's about 3 left, just enough for us to come back and make one more trip. But we'll come get that sap and then we'll run that down on the final trip, and then we'll come grab the camera and you guys will come with us to our maple sugar cabin, and that's where we'll teach you about the process of evaporation. All right, so we are in the back of our maple syrup cabin, our Cartier continuing education cabin. What Sarah's doing is she's dumping the buckets that we just took from our sugar bush up by the nature center. We traveled down here and we're pouring them into our bulk tank. This bulk tank is where we store our excess sap before we can get it into our evaporator and turn it into maple syrup, or get it close to maple syrup. So this is just a big storage container that's insulated. It's a former piece of dairy equipment that we just use to keep this sap cold if it does get warm throughout the maple season. And as we fill this up, we'll pour it into more buckets, and we'll take this bucket and we'll go empty it into our evaporator as needed. All right, we are now down at our Cartier Continuing Education classroom. This is a building that was donated to us by the Cartier family. It's in memory of Joe Cartier. This is where we are able to cook our sap and get it close to maple syrup. What we're gonna try to do here is we're gonna try to evaporate off all of the water that's inside of the sap and leave the sugars behind. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna enter the cabin here. You can see that the fire is going, smoke is coming out of the chimney up there. Matt's inside, he's cooking this sap down, and we'll see what that looks like. So now we're inside the Cartier Continuing Education classroom. Again, this is where we boil the sap to get rid of all that water content that's trapped inside of the sap and leave the sugars behind. So what Matt's doing here is he is throwing a bunch of wood into the evaporator. The evaporator it's a big wood stove that gets really, really hot. There's a pan on top of it that we pour all of our sap in. And then because that pan gets hot, the water heats up to boiling. and then it boils off all of that steam. So the water is turning from a liquid into a gas. What we're leaving behind is all of the sugars. We're gonna get this down, or up to a temperature at about
217 degrees.
About 217 degrees. Once we get it about there, it's ready to be finished. So the next step is we're gonna take the almost finished sap, we're gonna bring it up to our kitchen, and that's where we're gonna finish this and then eventually bottle it so that we can keep it to eat at a later date.
Hi, I'm here in the kitchen and the Nature Center at Fallen Timbers, and we have been cooking the syrup all day down in the sugar shack at the evaporator pan, and we have a batch that's ready to finish. So I have it on the stove here and it is boiling pretty good. So I'm going to show you that and show you what we do to figure out and know when it's ready to be bottled, when it's ready to be finished. I wish it was scratch and sniff video because it smells amazing in here right now. All right, so here is what it looks like inside. So we've got bubbles, we've got steam, and then what I'm gonna do next is I'm going to show you how I use this tool called a hydrometer. So the hydrometer is measuring the percent of sugar that we have in our syrup. We started off with usually about 2% sugar in our from our sugar maple trees, and then we're boiling off so much of that water until we get from 2% sugar to 67% sugar. So here I'm ladling some of this hot syrup into my glass graduated cylinder. I'm using a hot pad so I don't burn myself. I'm gonna set this down. And now this is the hydrometer here. So here's the tool. And I want it to be, it's gonna float in the syrup, and I want it to be in between those lines there to show that I'm at that percent sugar that I wanna be at. So there it is. It's just below that first red line. So it's in the zone. It's pretty much ready to be bottled. So what we're gonna do next is we've got our other equipment set up over here. We've got bottles and lids cleaned and ready. We've got our filters. So it's gonna go through these filters. So this is a paper filter and then a cloth filter, and these go inside of this, and then we'll pour the syrup in here, go through the filters, and then we'll be able to bottle it out this spout down here. And then the spout has a thermometer on it here to show that we are at temperature, so that once we are boiling it, that it stays warm enough for us to seal the jars and have the syrup be ready to go. So I'm gonna do that, and then we'll show you a finished bottle when we're all ready. All right. Here we go, here's the finished product. All right, one of the ways that you can connect to maple syruping is by making maple syrup in your own backyard. You can get supplies at some of the local stores in the future. If you want to try this next year, you can go to Fleet Farm or some of our local hardware stores, and they have maple syruping supplies there. So if you're gonna want to make maple syrup, you're gonna need to know which trees in your yard are maple trees. And so I've got a couple of tips for identifying maple trees. We know what a maple leaf looks like. So I've got one here. This is obviously an older dried up leaf, but when your trees get their new leaves this spring and summer, you can start noticing which ones are maples and look for this maple shape. These are sugar maples that we have here at Fallen Timbers that we're using, but we can use any kind of maple to make maple syrup. In Wisconsin, we have sugar maple, red maple, black maple, silver maple, and box elder, which are also in the maple family. And you can make maple syrup from the sap from any of those trees, but the sugar maple are the best because they have the highest percent sugar in their sap. Another way besides learning the leaves to tell is by looking at the branching. This time of year, our trees don't have any leaves, so we can't use that, but we can look at their branching. So maples have opposite branching. That means that the branches come off directly across from each other, opposite one another. So you can see on this stick that fell off one of our trees here, they're opposite branching. You can also look at the bark. Just like different trees have different shaped leaves, different types of trees have different textures and colors of bark. So our maple trees have rough bark that is kind of a grayish in color. And it does change as they get older, but and they get more and more rough as the trees age. So those are a couple tips of identifying maple trees in your yard. And we'll talk a little bit more about identifying trees in your yard as part of our Get Outside in Your Backyard challenge today.
Right, so that is our wrap up of our maple sugar lesson. We spent all day today, almost like all morning emptying the buckets. We spent mid-afternoon around lunch making sure that evaporator kept on going. Matt spent his whole day down in the maple sugar cabin to keep that sap boiling, to keep evaporating that water. And then we finally just finished up canning all of our maple syrup, and we were exhausted at the end of the day today.
Yeah, so that's another one of those things that makes maple syrup really special is how much work it is. And because it's so much work, it makes us really appreciate it.
Yeah. So the main reason we wanted to do this lesson and get this one out there first was we had a lot of students that didn't get to come out here this year at Fallen Timbers to experience our maple sugar lesson. So that's the main reason we're starting off with this one. We want students to be able to get this experience somehow. And we're still doing it today, so we thought that this was a good opportunity to do that. Now we want to send you some resources so that you can get outside in your yard as well. Today we developed 2 different activities. We have an activity that is for younger students to kind of just get outside, do some art activities, and just
feel connected with the trees in your backyard. So the maple syrup, through doing maple syrup, we learn a lot about the trees. And a couple of the ways that you can learn about the trees in your backyard are through some of these activities. So for the younger students, or for anyone who wants to be out there doing a little bit of art, we have a basic leaf rubbing, bark rubbing activity. So we have a worksheet that you can find a link to in the comments of the YouTube video, this YouTube video.
Or in the description, probably just below the video here.
Okay. And so you can print off this worksheet, take it right outside with your crayons, and find a leaf or go up to one of the trees in your yard and do a leaf rubbing or a bark rubbing, or just a coloring of something cool you find in your yard. So here's an example of a leaf that we did. I'm not sure if you can see it.
Yeah,
I think it's all right.
That'll be fine. Yeah.
Okay. So we've got a sugar maple leaf here from outside that my daughter Gwendolyn did, and then some bark from an ash tree right outside the nature center here as well. So those are 2 different examples of this activity that you can do, and you can print off as many as you want and go exploring in your backyard.
Yep, so that worksheet here it says it's very general. You could go to any rough surface, really get a feel for the surface, feel the different textures, and see how those translate to this paper as you rub coloring utensils across them. All right, just gets you outside and gets you kind of doing some art activities. The second one we have here is for more advanced students. The worksheet looks like this. You're not going to be able to read that, but this one is guiding students towards identifying trees in their backyard. So one of the main things that we need to make sure of when we're tapping trees is to make sure we're tapping a maple tree. If we don't tap a maple tree, we're not getting the correct type of sap to make maple syrup. All right, so what we are gonna do in this activity, or you're gonna do, is you're gonna take this sheet, you're gonna go outside and you're gonna draw the overall shape of the tree in your backyard. You're gonna draw the branching, so look at the branches, see how close, or
the pattern of how they come out of the tree.
The pattern that how they come off the main branch. And then finally the buddings, and the buds are the ends of those trees that have these buds attached to them. This is also a resource that we'll put into this description for a link for you. So what you'll do after you make all these drawings, you're going to make these drawings outside, go back inside, and then you're going to use that to try to identify that tree. The way that you're going to do that is we have some resources listed at the bottom of this page. The bottom of this page has two different things. This one is a guide for identifying trees during stick season, so the season that they don't have leaves, because right now we can't be using leaves to identify those trees. And then finally at the bottom here we have winter twig tree identification. That's another one, to just be able to use the twigs and the branches that are on the trees right now to be able to identify those trees.
And those are resources that we found online. The first one is a guide from New Hampshire, or Vermont, I think, and the second one is from New Hampshire. But both of them apply to here because the same trees that they're identifying in New Hampshire are also native here in Wisconsin.
Yeah, so you'll be able to use these resources to connect you with some trees or some different objects that are in your backyard. Just get outside, go do one of these activities, try both of them if you want, and then fill out those sheets, send us an email, show us the stuff that you're creating. This is the first instructional video that we will be creating. So we're gonna kind of work out the kinks as we go through this. But we wanted to make sure that we send you this information so that you have it.
Most of our videos are going to be a lot shorter because we'll just be introducing an activity that you can do outside. This one had all the content of sharing our maple syruping process with you. And some of them, we'll do some more instruction like that as well. But we have a list of about, 20 different ideas. So we'll see what we're able to get to. We'll share them out as we have them produced for you, and hopefully you enjoy them. Send us some feedback. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and keep following our activities and keep getting yourselves outside so you can stay healthy.
Yeah, I want to say that we're super excited to be able to do this. We're going to do as much as we can, but we're going to see how much we can do. We want to get you as many different activities as you can, and we'll see how long we can keep doing this.
Yeah, we miss our students a lot already, so we wanted to find a way to connect with you and to know that you're getting outside. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.